Hello, my name is Daniel Regan, and I am with Union University's Enactus chapter talking about our cybercycling project. This will be part one in the refurbishing process of how to refurbish donated computers for your cybercycling project. Before you begin, you will need the materials: a laptop and a charger, or if you have a desktop you're working on, you will need a monitor, a keyboard, a mouse, a desktop tower, 2 power cords, 1 power cord for the monitor, 1 power cord for the desktop, and 1 VGA cord. You will also need a D-Band AutoNuke CD, a PLOP CD to boot from a USB if there's not a DVD drive on the computer you're working with, the Linux Lite operating system, a ground strap, a shop vac, post-it notes, an Ethernet cord if using a desktop without wireless capabilities, an anti-static computer wipes. Optional are twist ties, Enactus logo squares, double-sided tape, and a Phillips head screwdriver. If this is the project chair, you also need a flathead screwdriver and a hammer for computers that do not work. If at any time during the refurbishing process you are unable to move forward, or there's a problem with the computer you're working on, write the problem specifically on a post-it note and place it on top of the computer so the project chair or a more experienced person can look at it and work on the computer. So the first thing you're going to want to do is set up the computer on a wooden surface, preferably, and attach one end of the ground strap to your wrist and the other end to a non-painted surface on the computer. Now, I'm not working with a ground strap, we do not have one, so I will keep contact with a metal non-painted surface at all times. So to open up the computer, each desktop is different, but these have 2 buttons that you push on either side to lift up, and that's how you'll get into the computer to clean it. So I will show how to clean the desktop out. Now, as you can see, there's tons of dust within the fans and around the motherboard. We do not have a shop vac, so we're going to use compressed air and a mini vacuum cleaner. Compressed air to get the dust loose, and a mini vacuum to vacuum it up. So what you're going to want to do is continue to touch a non-painted surface so you do not release electrostatic discharge and damage the computer. And with short bursts, you're going to blow compressed air at the computer while vacuuming the dust up with the vacuum cleaner. Continue to make sure you have at least some contact with the computer on a non-painted surface. Make sure you do not touch the vacuum cleaner to the motherboard, just around it. All other parts of the computer can come in contact with the vacuum cleaner. Using a shop vac is preferred because you can blow in and blow out. For laptops are going to be a little bit trickier. But while we have the desktop open, let's look at the RAM. Now, as you see, these are the RAM slots in the motherboard. They do not have any RAM. RAM is temporary memory that your computer needs to run any type of software. Now, since our computer doesn't have any RAM, we're going to install some. Installing RAM is pretty easy. You're going to handle it like this, not touching the actual long side of the RAM, but on the outsides. You're going to gently place it in the RAM slot and continue to touch a metal non-painted surface while you do this. But one end you're going to gently force into place and lock it, and then you're going to do the same thing with the other end, shimming it in there, and it should lock in place. Some computers are easier than others. As a rule of thumb, use gentle force with the computer, aiming not to break it. Alright, now that the RAM's locked in place, computer is ready to go. Now you will need at least 1 gigabyte of RAM to run the Nuke software and the Linux Lite software. To clean out the computers, or to clean out desktops, you will put the computer face down, and most of the time you'll be able to see the fan. So the fan will be underneath a vent, and with the compressed air, you will blow in the side vent towards the fan with short bursts to clean the dust out, to get it loose off the fan. If you're doing it right, you should see dust start to come out of the vents. Most of the time you're going to get inside the computer, start it up to check the amount of RAM, but I'm going to go ahead and show you, for the sake of this video, how to install RAM on a laptop. Most of the time the RAM is going to be in the center of the computer, underneath it, and usually it'll be easy to get access to. You only have to remove 2 or 3 screws. So take your Phillips head screwdriver, unscrew the centerpiece. As you see, this laptop has 1 gigabyte of RAM. Now, this laptop will eventually need 2 gigabytes of RAM before it is given out. So we're going to go ahead and put 2 gigabytes of RAM in there. You can go ahead and work on the computer with it just having 1 gigabyte of RAM. But before you give it out, it needs to at least have 2 gigabytes of RAM, 4 being a comfortable amount, but 2 being the bare minimum to run basic applications. Now that you have cleaned the dust out of the computer, you will plug it in. And turn the computer on. But before you turn the computer on, you're going to want to connect the keyboard, the mouse, and the monitor first. Now, if you can't find the RAM or are not able to get access to it, I'm going to show you how to do that. So as soon as you turn it on, you are going to press the setup menu key, which is usually F10. On these computers, you have to press enter to interrupt normal startup before you get to the setup utility. It says press F1 to enter utility, setup utility, so we're going to press F1. To get to the memory, we will go to main. Sometimes it'll say file or system summary. So we see main and then system summary. We're going to press enter. And the installed memory says 4096 megabytes. That's 4 gigabytes of RAM. So we're good there, as we saw when we installed it. We will now exit, so we know, since we know the amount of RAM. But before we do that, to change the boot options, you will go to startup, press enter when you see startup sequence. Now the disk drive should show up somewhere on the startup sequence. If it doesn't, these instructions on the right hand side of the computer show you how to do that. But since we already have disk drive on the startup sequence, we don't even have to worry about that. So press F10, save and exit. So we've cleaned the computer physically on the inside, we checked the amount of RAM, we're good to go on that. Now the computer will restart. We're going to press enter again to interrupt normal startup. And this time we're going to go to temporary boot options, which will usually be F12. So F12 to choose a temporary startup device. We're going to open the disk drive. take the AutoNuke CD. If you have it on a flash drive and you do not have a disk drive, you can use a USB. But we're going to put the D-Band AutoNuke CD in, which wipes the hard drive clean of any sensitive information. We're going to select disk drive, press enter. And if done correctly, you should see a screen such as the one we see here. At the bottom, it will say enter AutoNuke at this prompt to start D-Band in automatic mode. That is what you want to do. So go ahead and type AutoNuke and hit enter. From here, the computer will take anywhere from 1 to 6 hours to complete the nuking process. Don't move the computer and don't close the computer screen if you're using a laptop. And if at any time you want to unplug the monitor to use the monitor for another computer, just know that it might not register. Some computers have to have a monitor plugged in when it starts up, or else it won't register once unplugged. So if that happens, or you see no signal, then go ahead and leave the computer running for at least 6 hours. And after 6 hours, then you can go ahead and proceed to the next step. So once all data has been cleared, you should see a D-Band succeeded screen. And we'll pick up on part 2 of the refurbishing process to show you exactly how to install the operating system once the computer has been successfully wiped.